Whiskey, to most of the world, is Scotland, but now it's also Japan. Whiskey has become unmoored, pun intentional, from its Scottish terroir, the romance of heath and peat and moors, replaced by Japanese craftsmanship. Kodawari whiskey. The question arises, is it Yoshu or Washu? Yoshu's historical geography begins with port from Portugal, and in the 17th and 18th centuries, gin from Holland and Dejima in Nagasaki. Local Japanese benefited from the medicinal properties of these liquids as they learned their social pleasures and before they saw them as the cutting edge of modernity. By 1853, American distillations, first brought by Matthew Perry, made whiskey the object of aspirations and the measure of urbanity. Eventually, by the Taisho period, whiskey became as modern as coffee, as bobbed hair, and as jazz music. The first wave of Western-style made-in-Japan booze was hit or miss. One odd relic is Denki Buran, first distilled in 1882 at Kamiya Bar in Asakusa. Electric brandy, electric meant modern. It was made of a secret mix of gin, wine, curacao, and herbs. Whiskey in Japan really begins with Taketsuru Masataka, a chemist who went to Scotland in 1918 and returned to establish Nika in Hokkaido. His story, captured in the drama Massan, the nickname given to him by his Scottish wife Rita, embodies Rishin Shusei. After the war, a gift of the American whiskey, Johnny Kuro, showed the giver had class. With rising affluence, however, Chivas Regal soon took first place. The popular salaryman quaff became Mizuwari, or whiskey and soda. Prices for the good stuff are stratospheric. At a Hong Kong auction, a Yamazaki 50 went for $344,493. The buyer was Chinese. Shop signs read in English and Chinese, one per customer. The alternatives, no year, rice whiskey, awamori, and shochu aged in bourbon. The cask adds value. Japanese casks made from Mizunara oak now age Irish and Scottish whiskies. This Irish whiskey reads, extremely rare and expensive, our virgin Mizunara comes from Hokkaido, the rugged northern island. Mizunara is harvested at 200 years old. It must be aged another 20 years to avoid a woody taste. One ad reads, the Mizunara tree is the warrior of the Japanese forest, imbued with samurai spirit. The warrior cask costs $5,000. The wood is indeed hard to work and lends its value to other commodities, borrowing Mizunara's spirit and prices. A small bottle of Mizunara whiskey cask-aged shoyu will give you sticker shock. A bottle of Okinawan awamori aged in Mizunara gets $350. Many distilleries in Japan, like this one, Chichibu, began as a family-run sake brewery, where descendants have carried on the enterprise. With a sense of workmanship that makes whiskey-making craft, shokunin activity, rather than industrial labor. The owner, Akuto Ichiro, keeps a tasting library with hundreds of samples, including every distillation at every stage that he's ever made, in his sprawling plant in Saitama-ken. His meticulousness is not unusual. Ichiro's famous whiskey, the card set, a different whiskey in each of 54 bottles, labeled like a deck of cards, recently sold for $500,000. This distillation includes both malt and grain and shows the high status given in Japan to blends rather than the single malts valued in the US. Another distillery, Egashima Shuzo in Akashi near Kobe, began as a sake brewery in which the sixth generation son, actually Mukoyoshi, has taken on the whiskey boom. Because Urabe Yuki married into the family, he says he has to try harder. One of his warehouses, surrounded by a sculptural open-air display of pot stills, contains a museum of sake and whiskey making, including the clothes worn by workers 100 years ago. The heritage Egashima depicts is Japan's whiskey labor, the tools and techniques. At both, we were shown a spirit safe where the developing whiskey is tasted. In Scotland, the spirit safe is locked. Only the master distiller can taste. The workers might steal. Here, everyone tastes, from master to the women laborers. Everyone has a nose, a tongue, and a voice. Contemporary drinking shows a lot of change. Oyaji drinking was uncool until recently. A retread, Mizuwari, a haiboru, has created a boom in sales for Suntory Toki. Toki bars in the US feature this highball machine, calibrating carbonation and the exact ratio of whiskey to soda. The whiskey industry has explored new drinking patterns overseas. Nika Days was created for the American market, where it is thought millennials do day drinking, no longer requiring brown bags to hide its shame. Perhaps the unanticipated pandemic will enhance its sales. An example of a shokunin craft that has spread around the world is the hand-carved ice ball, to enhance with crystal clarity and a slow melt that dram of the world's best. The lingering question of whether it's yoshu or washu or perhaps mukokuseki might be silenced with a hearty kampai. Thank you very much.